Welcome back. Leave me alone. I'm busy farming and harvesting free sweet potato slips. These are from cuttings. Not my last video, which was the introduction to the new series, but the one before. I did a short video on harvesting sweet potato slips, and I promised a follow-up. Over a month passed since I had filmed it, so I'm actually going to start 6 new cuttings, and we'll follow up in a week. So basically, I cut the end off of a vine, and I like to cut it on an angle, and I'll get rid of some of the extra leaves. We'll leave that one. Now you could use a root hormone. I don't. I'm going to just put that in and come right down to the bottom. This is an Epic 6-cell seed starting tray. You could use anything. It could be a Dixie cup. It's really not going to matter. Once I push it down, I like to compact the soil and then just make sure it's filled up. Now, I'm going to thoroughly water it in. And at that point, for about a week, that's my goal, is to keep it well watered. And I like dappled sunlight, but I've had them in direct sunlight. It all depends on your context as to how hot it is, humidity, things of that nature. At the end of the day, if they've wilted just a little bit, just give them a little extra water. And in about a week, we should see roots coming out of the bottom. So just a little housekeeping to follow up on that. These are just cuttings from the end of a vine. In fact, if you see right here, that's where I cut one of these from. These are all sweet potatoes from slips I harvested. So again, free sweet potato slips, which ultimately equates to free sweet potatoes. Now, today, I'm going to talk about the tools that I'm going to use for my market garden. And again, it's the home market garden. So let me go grab some of those tools. All right, as promised, we're going to talk about some of the tools that I've recently purchased, some I've had. These are the tools that I'm going to use to, I've used them to establish my market garden beds, and they'll help maintain them. And as I turn the beds over going forward, these are the tools. Now, I feel like I'm filming in a scene from The Birds or something. There's like 100 crows up in my neighbor's tree and one back here. But I'm going to try and talk about these tools in the order of importance as I see it, because I've had a chance to use these for a while. First one is a wire hoe. This is used for cultivating weeds before they can establish themselves. You basically run it through your beds and walkways, and you disrupt the, I'm going to say maybe top ½ inch of soil, and those weed seedlings get lifted out, and typically the sun kills them off. We've found this to be extremely useful in our gardens, like Stacy's garden. My wife Stacy has a garden that goes around the perimeter of our fence to that side of the property, and she uses this on a weekly basis now, and it's been a game changer. Let me show you a couple of the accessories that go with this. Jerry would love these for outtakes. Dropping crap everywhere, getting tangled up. All right, let me talk about some of the accessories. Now, just to be clear, this setup right here is probably all you need to get going. I opted to buy the accessory kit that has various size wire hoe attachments to it. So this one is typically good for my pathways. I have a wider area, no plants in the way, or I'll use this one. This is good for Stacy's garden where she's got a lot of flowers. And then they have a really small one, so if you have your vegetables in a very tight, straight row configuration, you'd use this smaller one. This one seems to work really well. So this is the wire hose. They do have one other one that has a small, I think it's like a 1-inch or 2-inch step up, and then it's maybe that wide. So something along the lines of that. I did not get that one. I could see now where that would be helpful. But again, wire hoe. Here's some basil. You just drag it right along this way, and you'll come back this way here and get in between your seedlings. Do that on about a weekly basis, and it's enough to disrupt the top layer of soil to keep your weed growth down. I'm still having to hand weed just a little bit. Now, one other attachment. They're the collinears. These are good. You can use them in the market garden beds, but I like these in the pathway. And basically you attach this and you could drag it along. It's got a sharper edge here, so you do need to be mindful when you have any drip irrigation lines like I have here. You want to be very careful when you're cultivating using your collinear hose. I bought the accessory that has 2 of them. I have used it. They work great, but remember I talked about like things that I deem a necessity. I would say that right there is going to be your number 1 tool, because you're going to use it more than any other one. Let's go to number 2. Tool number 2 that I think is key. Number 2, the rake. This is a 30-inch rake. So you can see I have a 30-inch bed. You can see where that would be handy, right? Now, why I say this is my number 2 choice as most important tool. When you establish your beds, basically you're going to remove your weeds. You can put down a layer of cardboard. We'll get way more in depth into how to set these up in future videos, but you're going to put down compost, and then you're going to want to rake it out. There's a couple of ways you can do that. So hand tools, I would say this is extremely important, therefore it's number 2 must-have tool. And then once you amend your compost, you can use this to rake it in. Now, getting started, if you didn't have the funds, and that's under $100, you can use, I have a bees attacking me. I have my sweet almond tree over here. It attracts so many pollinators. Most of you are going to have a garden rake like this. You can use this. Okay? 2 passes. This will work just fine. But in the long run, you're probably going to want to step up to a larger rake. You can get those in the big box or online. Tool number 3. This is a broad fork. Okay? When you're first establishing your beds, so in my situation, let me just back up just a minute. I had grass and I had a lot of compacted soil from over the years of going over this with a mower, the rain. So once you remove your grass, this goes in the ground. I think these are close to 12 inches. You step on it, work it into the ground, and you basically lift up the soil just a little bit till it cracks. Again, I'll show you more on that. That's to help aerate the soil. This type of gardening, once you establish your beds, you want to do the least amount of disruption of your soil. It'll bring up weeds and kill a lot of the beneficial fungi and soil life that's in your garden bed. Now, what can you use in lieu of this? This was a little bit more. This is about a $200 purchase. How about just a pitchfork? All right, same thing. Put it in the ground, and you could lift up a little bit. It's not as sturdy, so if your soil is really compacted and you have a lot of rocks, probably not going to work great. You could use a shovel initially, something to just loosen up your soil. Really, the broad fork is the way to go. So these are basic hand tools, and my recommendation would be the wire hoe, the 30-inch garden rake, and a broad fork. They do sell cheaper ones, so again, whatever your budget affords, I would say those are pretty essential tools to starting and establishing and keeping these beds in production as you go forward. Let me talk about number 4. This is a favorite. Pretty simple creation. It's called a gritter. Now, each circular section of metal, as you roll this down your garden bed, leaves a kind of a trail, a little indentation in your soil. Each one of these crossbars, as it rolls, makes another line. So now you have lines going straight and then cutting across. This is known as a 3x3. They do sell attachments to this, 2x2s. The configuration I went with, I don't remember what I spent. I'm gonna say, I don't know, $150-ish. I think this one's an essential tool. You don't necessarily have to do it. You can make a grid pattern. But the key is, in a market garden, you want to establish beds that are straight. Over here, I've got 3x3, right? So I've got Swiss chard, 3, I've got kale. Not all of my seedlings have germinated. That's a story for another video. But when they're nice and straight, it allows you to just walk down your path with your wire hoe and maintain the weed population, control it. All right, I think we're on 5. This, another tool, hand tool, I think under $100. It's called a zipper. What I like about it is, these are 40-foot beds. I could drag it along, and this bottom piece creates a little channel, if you will. As I'm amending my soil, once my plants have germinated and I want to feed them, whether it's weekly, monthly, I run this down my bed. I could put in my organic fertilizer, and then you flip it over and drag it across this way, and it literally, you could see it's narrow and wide in the front. It acts like a little hand plow and basically covers up the channel that you made. So again, a zipper. I'm a big fan of the hand tools, so I would suggest at least get your hand tools. If this is something that you're relying on to ensure your family has organic fruits and vegetables, these tools, all of these tools so far, other than maybe the broad fork and the bigger rake, I've used in my birdies raised garden beds. I've used the gritter in them, and it's made for a nice, organized, raised garden bed. Let me talk about some of the tools that aren't so much critical. All right, 6 and 7, we'll go quick. This is an electric tiller. Now, I got this to establish my beds. So in the market garden, again, it's minimal soil disruption. However, I had some compacted soil, so once I removed the grass that was here, I tilled the area where my beds were going to be, and then I used my broad fork. You could do without this. There's many ways to loosen up your soil and aerate it. I would say if you had to, at least the broad fork. This again was about $100 from a big box store. It works great. I have it on the shallowest setting. I didn't want to disturb too deep. Okay, now the last one, this was a splurge. This is called a tilther. And once you have your beds established and your compost is down, you use an organic fertilizer to amend your soil. So now I'm going to give it a lot of the nutrients and micronutrients that's going to help my vegetables grow. As you can see here, this is very shallow. I'm going to say less than 2 inches. It's operated by a battery-driven hand drill. This will go down each bed 2 passes, and it's used to amend the very top of the soil. Again, the concept here is minimal soil disruption. So this one Again, you could use the 30-inch rake. This was a splurge, not a necessity, but going forward, if you're going to have a lot of these beds, this will be a big time saver. I wanted to give you all a little context here. I'm in beautiful, sunny Florida. This is Zone 9B. So going forward, this series of videos I'm going to be doing on my home market garden is applicable to what's working for me in this zone. Excuse me, I'm getting really thirsty. Now, in future videos, we're going to talk more about each tool. That's kind of handy, right? And how I've used them and how I'm going to continue to use them going forward. Not only will I give you examples of how I'm using it out here in my market garden, home market garden, I'll show you how I'm using them in my food forest, in Stacy's flower garden, and inside my Birdie's raised garden beds. So if you don't want to miss any of these videos on the tools and techniques that I'm going to use for my home market garden, I want to make that clear. I'll be showing you what's working for me and sometimes what's not working. I fail quite often, and that's just the way it is. Gardening is not as easy as it looks. Mother Nature has a big hand in this, and a lot of times she likes to fight you on having a productive garden. So if you don't want to miss any of the videos going forward, please make sure you subscribe. Please like our videos. Feel free to share them. And thank you for watching. Leave me alone. I'm busy farming. And I want to say hi to Camden, Piper, and Kay. They're 3 big fans of ours, and we appreciate each and every one of you. If you leave me your name in a comment, I'll be sure to say hello to you. So thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.